welcome back to Voyage of a Time Wanderer. Today I am going to do a selection of 5-star predictions for historical fiction that I want to read in 2023. So I've been wanting to do a 5-star prediction video for a while, but I was, I guess, a little bit overwhelmed by all the choices I had about books that I could include on this list. And then I saw a video by the booktuber Gloria Z. Thompson where she just did 5-star historical fiction predictions, and I thought that that was a great idea, so I am going ahead to do that for some of the historical fiction titles that I want to read in 2023 that I think I'm going to really enjoy. And that kind of narrowed the scope down so that I could pick 6 books that are historical fiction novels that I think could be 5-star reads for me. So I will go through each of the 6 books and kind of explain why I think they might be a 5-star read, and then hopefully when I finish all 6 or at the end of the year, I'll kind of give an update on if I read all 6 and if they turned out to be 5-star reads, and if so, why or why not. So the first book that I have on my list is Any Known Blood by Lawrence Hill. This book is on my 5-star predictions because Lawrence Hill is one of my favorite authors, but I probably shouldn't say that because I've only read one of his books. But the book that I have read of his, The Book of Negroes, is one of my very favorite books of all time. I studied it in both high school and university and have reread it multiple times, and I absolutely love that book, but I have never read any of his other works. So I definitely think, because of how much I love The Book of Negroes, that his writing style really must jive with me, and that his other books probably have 5-star potential. This book is a multi-generational family saga, which is another element that I really love in books. So it covers 5 generations of a Black Canadian family starting in the 19th century Virginia, moving up into the present day in Oakville, Ontario. And we are following this man, Langston Kane V, who is kind of trying to discover more about his family's story and his place in the world as he has a bit of a midlife crisis. Langston is a biracial man. He has a white mother and a black father, so I think Lawrence Hill is kind of drawing on some of his own personal experiences growing up in Ontario as a biracial man. And it says that Langston goes to visit his Aunt Mill, where he finds a box crammed with family documents. With these, he sets out to reconstruct the lives of his ancestors, beginning with his own parents' struggle against segregation in Canada, and moving back in time to the story of his great-great-grandfather, a supposed hero in John Brown's famous anti-slavery raid on Harper's Ferry, Virginia. Langston discovers a long line of relatives in constant battle for their rights and dignity. So it's got kind of an ancestral genealogy twist, which is another element that I love in books, so I think this one could easily be a shoo-in for 5 stars. It is quite long. It looks like it is over 500 pages. If I enjoyed as much as I love The Book of Negroes, this will be an easy 5-star, and I'm looking forward to kind of following along this 150-year family journey and learning a little bit more about Black and biracial Canadians' experiences throughout history. Then the next book on my list is Illuminations by Maurier Sharratt. I read her book Revelations in 2022, and it's going to be one of my favorite books of the year, so of course I want to pick up more by her. In Revelations, we're following the story of Marjorie Kemp, and she also had interactions with Julian of Norwich. And in Illuminations, we're following the story of Hildegard of Bingen. So both of those books are dealing with kind of medieval Christian mystic women, so I think they have some similarities, and since I enjoyed Revelations so much, I think I might really enjoy Illuminations as well. Hildegard of Bingen is someone that I've been wanting to learn more about. She was a scholar, mystic, healer, musician. She was a Benedictine nun who later became an abbess, and she wrote lots of music, lots of spiritual writing, and some books on herbology. So I think she's a really fascinating medieval figure, and I would love to see how Maurier Sharratt is able to bring her to life. So I think having the elements of a true story of a strong medieval Catholic woman with the writing that I enjoyed so much in Revelations means that this book could easily be 5 stars for me. And the next book is The Lacuna by Barbara Kingsolver, and this is a book that my best friend absolutely loves and has been trying to get me to read for probably more than a decade. I feel like I've owned this book for more than a decade, like since the early years of university when my friend read it and said that I would love it, and I tracked down a copy at Value Village. I have been wanting to read this book and for some reason haven't, but I think it could easily be 5 stars. The only other Barbara Kingsolver that I have read is the Posionwood Bible, which follows a missionary family in the Congo right around the time of Congolese independence, and I really loved how she was able to bring that time period and atmosphere to life. And this is another book of 20th century historical fiction by her. The brief little blurb at the top of this says, in her most accomplished novel, Barbara Kingsolver takes us on an epic journey from the Mexico City of artists Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo to the America of Pearl Harbor, FDR, and J. Edgar Hoover. The Lacuna is a poignant story of a man pulled between two nations as they invent their modern identities. So we're following this man, Harrison Shepherd, from the 1930s through into like the 1950s, I think, in both Mexico and the United States, following the events of the Second World War and kind of a lot of political intrigue. It sounds like there's a lot of real-life characters like Frida Kahlo and different politicians, so I think that that is an element I would really like. I know I really enjoyed Kingsolver's writing. In the Posionwood Bible, she was able to bring a multi-perspective novel to life in a way that felt very authentic. Like each character had a very independent voice, which I really appreciated. And being someone who can be a bit of a political science nerd at times, I think having those political elements woven into this book would be really interesting. It says that Harrison discovers a fascination for Aztec history and later goes to work for Lev Trotsky. So that's like odd and intriguing. I haven't read a ton of books set in Mexico, so I think that I will really enjoy having that kind of new to me setting in historical fiction, and I would love to finally read this book and find out if it'll be 5 stars for me. Then the next book is The Bass Rock by Evie Wilde. I don't know if it's the Bass Rock or the Bass Rock. I feel like you could pronounce it either way. This is a book that will be on my Reading Through My Family Tree Scottish Isles edition TBR video when I finally finish up the last few of my Dutch Golden Age books. And so it's a book that I've been looking forward to reading for quite a while, but I haven't read because I knew I wanted to read it as part of my Scottish family tree reading journey. This is another multi-timeline book, so we're following 3 women across 3 different time periods. We have a character in the 1700s who is accused of being a witch. We have a character just after the Second World War in the 1940s and 50s who has just moved into this community. And then of course we have our modern day timeline where we are following a woman cleaning out this same house that the other 2 women have lived in after her father's death. There are a couple of reasons that I think this book might be a 5-star read for me. I've never read anything by this author before, so that is a little bit of a shot in the dark whether I'm going to jive with her writing style, but I definitely really enjoy books set in Scotland, so I'm looking forward to that. Usually it's a very atmospheric setting, and especially this one sounds like it's either set on an island or right along the coastline. So there's lots of opportunity for kind of gothic, atmospheric writing. I love multi-timeline books particularly. It sounds like there might be some sort of family ties between the 3 timelines, which is something that I always love, seeing how the impact of an ancestor's actions or an ancestor's personalities or characteristics on their descendants into the future. And lastly, I am shallow, but I think the cover is absolutely stunning, and it's definitely drawing me into this book and making me think I could really enjoy it. Then the 5th book that I'm putting on this 5-star prediction list is The King's General by Daphne du Maurier. After finishing up Rebecca, I knew that I had to read more Daphne du Maurier, and I haven't yet read anything else by her, but I'm hoping to read at least 1 or 2 books in 2023. I'd love to read The King's General and My Cousin Rachel if possible. So The King's General is one of Daphne du Maurier's historical fiction books. It is set in the 1700s, and we are following a young woman called Honor who has been injured in a riding accident and has, as a result, has lost the love of her life. She's no longer able to marry him after her injuries, and we are following her through the time period of the English Civil War. And that's a time period that I don't know a ton about. Like, I haven't read very many books set there. I kind of know the broad brushstrokes of the historical facts of that time period, but in terms of actually reading books set in that time period and knowing little intricacies of daily life and all the things that historical fiction is able to bring alive. I don't really have that background yet. So it's exciting to be exploring entirely new to me historical time period in this book. And apparently it's set in a mansion that is kind of the prototype for Manderley from Rebecca. So I'm loving thinking of this book kind of being like the origin story of Manderley. I believe it's set along the Cornish coast, just like Rebecca, so I think it's going to have a lot of that gothic atmosphere and suspense that du Maurier did so well in Rebecca and that made me love Rebecca so much. And I'm excited to have another house as a character kind of book from her. I love books where the buildings are almost a character, if that makes sense. Like, that's why I love books set in cathedrals so much, because the building is just such an overwhelming presence in the book and in the lives of the characters that it kind of takes on its own presence in a very unique way. So the mansion in this book is called Menabilly, and I'm really curious to see how du Maurier writes historical fiction, because Rebecca obviously was written contemporary to her time period, but this book is, a couple hundred years before her time, so I think that'll be interesting to see how her writing style translates into historical fiction. But based off of how deeply I loved Rebecca, I think this book could be a 5-star read for me, and Kate Howe highly recommended it to me as my next du Maurier, so that's a very high praise and high recommendation that makes me really confident that I'm going to really enjoy The King's General. And then the 6th and final book on this 5-star prediction list is Meet Me in Monaco by Hazel Gaynor and Heather Webb. I read Last Christmas in Paris by these two authors in 2021, and I absolutely loved it. I did a whole review video comparing it to the Guernsey Literary Potato Peel Pie Society and why I think more people should be reading Last Christmas in Paris. I think this duo has something that's really unique. They seem to write books kind of in parts, like each writer will have one character that they're responsible for. So in Last Christmas in Paris, it was an epistolary novel, and one author wrote one character's letters and the other author wrote the other character's letters. And I think it was really effective because that meant that both characters had a very unique voice. Sometimes in multi-character books that are written by one author, it's kind of hard to see the difference between the characters. Like, if you were to just open the book randomly and read a page, you wouldn't necessarily know which character's head you were inside. So having different authors write the different parts is a really brilliant idea, I think, because it makes those voices very unique. So this is another collaborative book written by the two of them. It is set in the 1950s along the French Riviera and in Monaco. And it is following Grace Kelly right before her marriage to Prince Rainier, when she is a glamorous film star, and she is trying to escape paparazzi and ducks into a shop owned by a woman called Sophie Duval, who is a perfumier, and her perfume shop has been struggling financially. And then she meets Grace Kelly. And then the other perspective that it's written from is from one of the journalists or paparazzi members called James Henderson. So we're following James and Sophie as they're kind of on the periphery of the life of Grace Kelly. So there's a couple of reasons why I think I could really enjoy this book. For starters, obviously I have really enjoyed one of the other books written by these two authors, so I am thinking that I might really enjoy this book. I think the setting sounds wonderful, maybe as like a summertime read to read about someone's escape along the French Riviera. I think it has the potential to be a very consuming setting and kind of a romantic setting to read about. And then having this element of Grace Kelly's marriage to Prince Rainier and their love story. I am a big royal watcher. I enjoy following the modern royal families, so I still do follow some of the activities of the Monaco royal family, so I think knowing a little bit more about their history and just in general following a royal love story is an element that I would potentially really enjoy in a book. So those are the 6 historical fiction novels that I am predicting I could potentially end up really loving and giving 5 stars. I'm hoping to get to all of them in 2023, and I will do an update video once I've read them, and we will find out if I enjoyed them and what my actual ratings ended up being. If you've read any of these, I would love to know what your thoughts are, and until next time, enjoy wandering through the pages of a good book. Bye.